Morning. Welcome back to Gutjumbar. This morning, our first speaker is Senator Nigel Scullion, Senator for the Northern Territory. Following that, there'll be a panel with Bob Gordon from Forestry Tasmania, Alan Tietzel from Rio Tinto, Michael O'Connor from the CFMEU, and the Nyamal people with Tom Weaver from FMG. And then at 11 o'clock, then there's morning tea. Then straight after morning tea, a very special event. 2 deals are going to be signed and they're very exciting, so come back after morning tea for that. Then a session of questions and answers. Lunch, and then we have Secretary of State for Natural Resources, Timor-Leste, Alfredo Perez. Afternoon tea, then a Yolngu panel, and then we close, dinner, and then those of you who are going to the airport will be taken to the airport. So just to let you know what's happening today, I think it's important so that you don't feel like you're wandering from event to event, asking yourself what's going to happen next, although I often do that here, so. Just remove some of the mystery for you. So it's my very great pleasure to welcome Senator Nigel Scullion to speak. I've known Nigel for very many years. I can't remember how long. It's close to 2 decades, I think, or possibly 20 years. Now, Nigel started out in the fishing industry, and I first came across him when he was explaining how he was reforming the fishing industry and bringing in the new nets to avoid, catching he was saying the mermaids. Stopping our blokes from catching mermaids in their nets. I thought, this is interesting. So he personally represented the industry and went to all of these coastal communities to ask them how the fishing industry ought to better engage with them. And so it's a long, complicated story, but, President of the Seafood Industry Council, a lot of influence in the Darwin community because, in those days especially, fishing people were a big section of the community. And then, of course, he was elected to the position of Senator, and he's now the opposition spokesman on Indigenous Affairs. And I want to say that his engagement with the expert panel on constitutional recognition, right from the very beginning, coming down to our meeting in Perth and giving a Chatham's House dinner speech, really gave us the feeling that, we needn't fear the cross-party conflict, that we could actually engage with both sides of politics and have a really good debate. And Nigel's a peacemaker, so we'll hear from you, Nigel.
Well, thanks very much, Marsha. It's a pity your mum's never around when they say nice things about you, isn't it? Yes, I've known Marsha for a very long time, and Marsha and Bapaji and so many people, I think that if we think ourselves in our own past, it's the people around us that really form who we are and form the character that you are. So if you think I'm a bit of a bonehead, you can blame that part on Marsha. I'm sorry that Warren Mundine isn't here. I think he's down at Baniella solving a mutual drum we've got down there, but he's someone else who I've also known for a very, very long time, and the assistance that they've given me in conversations has greatly assisted me in providing what leadership I can to the Northern Territory, and particularly to Aboriginal people, and more specifically the Yolngu. So that's what if I'd like to just talk just briefly about this forum and the importance of this forum. I have to say I've been to a number of Garmas. They're not all like this. I think this particular forum is one that I guess this, Gutjumbar, the new way here, This is about sharing. It's about the Yunal culture is about sharing. It comes with its challenges, but it is a culture that's one of its fundamentals is sharing. It's conversations, stories. And in our game, very practically, the more conversations we can have as industry, as people, as government, and as in this case, the Yunal Nation itself, these are really fundamentally really important conversations. And I have a sense when I'm here, I'm not here as a politician, I'm here as somebody in a conversation. And I think that's really important. That's the whole sense of what I've got over the last couple of days, and I think that is a really, really important environment. Because what normally happens in Indigenous affairs, or in fact politics in Australia more generally, someone will stand up and say, look, I reckon a giraffe should look like this. The other bloke says, no, I think it should be a bit shorter. Bang, polarisation of events, both argue for the same place, and the real answer probably doesn't lie in any of those places. And so having more conversations like this, I think, is extremely important. I'd like to commend the Yothel Unity Foundation for its work, and Marsha and Bapaji and Sean for the continuing effort that you make into this very, very important forum. And I'd forgotten all about Mungbinya Guruliyapa, but it was an organisation that we formed basically that cut government out, because every time the fishermen wanted to talk to somebody about native title on the ocean or any of those things, and I ended up being the principal respondent in the test case over native title over the seas with Mary Armir. But the process was a process where we sat down and we tried to talk. And every time we sat down, some bonehead in a suit had arrived with a lawyer. You know, and we'd look at each other, and of course it got polarised and everybody went away again. So the Yunal and the fishermen sat down here and we said we would... Mungbinya Guruliyapa is basically about the meeting of the ocean at the place called Cape Wessel off Rimbuja Island, which is the top of Marchenbar, which is pretty much straight north of us here. Very beautiful place. So we had meetings. Eventually, the only meeting, we'd have little secret meetings. When they'd gone, we'd say, God, what do you want to do? We suddenly realised, well, that's what we should do. So we politely as we could said, look, just if you could just not come, that would be really good. But when we've done a couple of things and got some stuff done, we'll give you a yell, see how you go. And interestingly, that it was a very in terms of the test case over the sea, it was very interesting because Justice Olney remarked as I held hands at the front of the court that very rare you'd find such a litigious process like native title being dealt with such goodwill. And I think because the participants who wanted the outcome the most, which was the fishermen and the Indigenous people across the top end, and in fact in Australia, wanted that. The outcome we wanted was that I just wanted to know what that meant. So we actually said up front, the Commonwealth came to represent us and the Northern Territory government came to represent us, and we said, no, we've got our own representation. And what we've said is that we don't reject the fact that native title is over the seas. We suspect it probably does. I don't know, but we're accepting out of respect that it does. All we want to know is what it means. All we want to know is what it means. And suddenly the only polarised view was, on one side of the camp, there was Aboriginal people and fishermen saying, well, all we want to know is what that means. And the Commonwealth and the Territory were pretty incoherent about what they wanted. And I think it's really important when you go to a meeting or try to attempt something, you've got to consider your motive. Why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? You know, and I think that's just such an important part of these conversations. And so, look, what I thought I'd do today, I had absolutely no idea what I'd say when I woke up this morning, which is generally the case. And invariably, if I'd thought about it a couple of days ago, it's all been said. And it's been, for me, absolutely insightful. I am, as you know, the shadow spokesperson on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander affairs for the Coalition. And it's my task to formulate policy. Now, a lot of people think policy, oh yeah, that's the thing they talk about just before an election. Or we never talk about it until it's just before an election. But fundamentally, policy is basically, I think, just a suite of beliefs. This is what you believe in. We think that's a good thing. We don't think that's such a good thing. And that, because of technology, that because of new ideas, that because of new exposure, has to change all the time. It has to be flexible. Now, in opposition, I don't think a policy is important because it's something we've got to throw up in the front of the people and do a little dance around it, and this is prettier and more colourful than that one. It's something that we need to hold all of us to task. And it's not in the public domain, but I tell you, most of my life is holding my own party room to task, as it is most people in that party room, as it is no doubt in Labor caucus, as it is no doubt in whatever the Greens do. But these are very important processes, and this is a forum that informs those processes so well. Now, Trish was here. I get on very well with Trish. She's a fantastic lady and a good friend of mine. Now, she happens to be on the other side of... So when we're asked to, we throw rocks at each other. But having both sides of Parliament here, having Terry here and whoever else here who will listen and get the sense of the place, I think ensure that people start moving in this particular issue about re-engaging our first Australians, move away from the polarised positions that politics naturally takes us to a place where we're trying to have a conversation where there's more likely to have some fairly fair income outcomes rather than the garbage that we generally get out of this by pretty much knowing that we're not exactly where we need to be. So I'd like to commend one of the things that my mate Warren Mundine said yesterday. I don't like to commend him publicly for anything because he'll get me to buy him a beer or something. But look, he said, look, we must never let an opportunity for innovation go past. Innovation means change, and change is tough. What we heard from a couple of people yesterday, now I'm not sure if Graham's still here, incredible young bloke, he's going to do fantastic things for that particular community. But one of the great challenges is, as he says, is with royalties. Let me tell you, there are those people, I've never been much of a populist, but let me tell you, I cry for my friends who I've seen lives destroyed from sit-down money, from welfare. But make no bones about it, royalties is bloody welfare. It is as simple as that. It is as simple as that. It comes in the same unconditional way. It might be earned, of course, all those differences. But to many of the people who are in this terrible cycle of welfare dependency, royalties are the same. And I think, not for us, because it's not a decision for politicians. This is a decision for the Yulin mob. And it's a decision also for those miners who are negotiating that. But as an observer, I think it's really important that we have a look at that. Now, I do bits and pieces around the place and try to better inform myself. There's a lot of people, every time I say, look, my mate here is pretty crook, he hasn't got a job, he's disconnected from work, he's disconnected from home, his community, his language, and he's doing pretty badly, he's self-medicating. And someone says, mate, let me talk to you about sovereignty. And I go and hit my head hard against a tree. But I didn't really understand much about sovereignty, so I said, look, okay, look. I went over to the States and I visited a number of sovereign nations. And so during my visit to sovereign nations, understanding about sovereignty, and still puzzling why they're 70% unemployed with much of the same issues as those places who don't, but that's another matter. I bumped into some people who'd been associated with this place in Cold Lake. Now, they mine tar sands. Oh, it makes me shudder. Don't go there. If you love the bush, don't go there. It'll hurt your soul. But the Mikisew Cree Nation have decided that they are going to get in the mining business. Oh, they said, well, they had a bit of a conversation and said, it's really interesting. We talked to these big miners and they said, if we make an investment of $10 billion, let's call it $10, in something, you know, we're looking at the best to make $2 out of that investment. So where does the other $8 go? Where's all this other money go? Well, it goes into getting the stuff out of the ground, carting it around the place and doing this and doing that. And so much of the money, when we talk about the investments of these individuals and these companies around the place, it gets spent in Australia, and it's also to be seen not only gets spent here, but it's an opportunity about how that's spent. So Primco, now that's an organisation, wholly owned, native controlled organisation. I think they've taken, it's around about $1 billion in annual revenues, there's no royalties, in annual revenues for services provided to mining companies. $1 billion. Now, Primco's only takes a small part of that. They take about half of that, about 500 million a year they turn over. They've just made a decision to employ 700 people, of which 500, they've decided, as a board, they're going to be Indigenous people. We don't have enough, boss. Don't worry about it. Get them on a bloody plane from somewhere else then. They're still our mob. They're still our mob. So, you know, it works well in some places. And this is not a small enterprise. These are enterprises of the size. They own, you know, they own trucks. And there's the Chief Dave, he's sort of leaning on this car tyre. You can't do this truck tyres, and one of these monstrous Euclid trucks. And said, yeah, look, we sort of got in the business. They were wrecking the country. Sort of couldn't do much about it. So we thought we'd get on the Murray, do this and that. We bought a truck and sort of fiddle around with this and his stuff. And he said the daughter got him a year that it was probably better to, you know, do this rather than spending all. You should drive a truck rather than arguing, this futility about royalties. So he stepped around the corner. He says, those 104 of them there, they're mine too. Each one over $1 million. Every single one driven by a woman. Every single one of them was driven by somebody from that area. Someone from that area. Now, they're all doing pretty well. I mean, they're living in mining madness. I've done it myself. I don't commend it to everyone. But it's a time in your life that you can get ahead. And they're all thinking about that stuff. They're all getting ahead. And they don't have disconnection dramas. They just have the same dramas every Australian and every Canadian does. It's just all a nightmare, but their nightmares are our nightmares. And for some reason, that's the way our collective views think life should be. And I tend to agree with that. And so there is an opportunity to take somewhere like Cold Lake from in 1999, 72% Indigenous unemployed, today to 10. Now, as I said, this is not a matter for government policy, but I couldn't resist the observation that there are clear opportunities that are happening in this country where instead of handing out money in a very patronising way, and because that's how the deals are traditionally done, it will be bloody hard in the Northern Territory to fix this because we've got a whole range of systems. The Northern Land Council, the Central Land Council are effectively, and rightly so, supported financially through the Aboriginal Benefits Trust account process. All of these things are based on royalties. So it is going to be tough to move out because the miners will say, Nige, not on top of royalties. Hey, look, this is just about having a fair income conversation about a place to be that we all agree we need to be. We all agree. Doesn't matter if you're a miner or a government or where you come from on the spectrum of life or thought. We all know that we need a better deal for the mob. And if I see a better deal for the mob in Canada, I know it's not my job and I know the way here for me to shove it down people's throat, but I think it should be introduced as part of a fair income conversation about how we know that this can be a better relationship. A better relationship. Because that's the other thing in Canada. It's a fantastic relationship because the miners say, well, no worries, listen, we're thinking about having a yarn to this other mob over there, and they'll say, no, we'll have a yarn and it'll be right, you know, we're all got a vested interest in it. We know that we're doing all the environmental work actually. We're getting paid to return our country to exactly the pristine condition, well, not over there I have to say, but to the condition that we want it. So there's a whole range of ways that I think that just having a bit of a different approach on things can help. Look, if I can just talk more generally about engagement in the mining and perhaps in the wider issues. I know specifically to talk about the opportunities for engagement in the mining industry, but I think they are very transferable. And we had the guy from the ABC radio down the back there yesterday asked the obvious question, well, you know, it's only about mining, it's going to run out, what about the rest of the world? What about other opportunities? Can I just say that it is important to understand the challenge of the demographic we're dealing with. And I like to sort of lecture my colleagues a bit about this, but we're not dealing with blackfellas. We're not dealing with Aboriginals. We're not dealing with Torres Strait Islanders. We're not dealing with Indigenous people. We're dealing with poor people. That's who we're dealing with. This whole issue is not about ethnicity. This issue, as I've said time and time again, this issue is about disconnection. This is about people who find themselves disconnected. And I've worked many places in the world, whether it's been Rio, the Favela in Rio, or some of the hardest fishing communities in Murmansk in northern Russia, or in some places in Ireland. Let me tell you, the circumstances of disconnection and the cycle of substance abuse is exactly the bloody same, except they're all different colours, that's all. And so fundamentally, my approach, and I think everybody's approach should be, that the solutions we have to reconnecting people who are far overrepresented in the demographic of being poor, and that's Aboriginal people, are the same. And these are the tools we should be using across Australia, because I can tell you the disconnected community of today will change. Aboriginals aren't going to be the disconnected community, I don't believe, in 10 and 20 years' time that they are today. But there will be other demographics, probably other people with less opportunity who haven't looked after the country in the way they have in regional rural Australia, who will be doing it as hard in 20 years as Aboriginals are today. And so we need to think about these tools not only about Aboriginal people, but as people who are disengaged more generally. There's been a bit of talk about this VTEC program. I spent, and my thanks very much to the VTEC mob in West Australia. I spent 4 days over there, sort of going through the whole process and how it all operates. Look, one of my takeaway view from that was pretty interesting, is that Twiggy has been so frustrated, I guess, with the process that he's just decided that he'd do what government should have been doing all along. Because I just sort of noted as we came in here, I'm introduced to the VTEC team. We said, well, we've got the guys over here. This is blah, 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 blah. And I said, what do you guys do? Oh, look, we're re-engagement officers. I thought, oh, yeah, I've heard that term before. What does that do? Oh, well, actually, we go out into the community and we actually provide an amicus role standing alongside someone for a long period of time. I said, well, we don't do that, but we just call them that. And this is the medical professional. Oh, g'day, love, how are you? Great stuff. So how do you fit into that? Oh, I'm a fully employed medical professional to work here with the mob as they come through VTEC. No worries. What about you, mate? Oh, look, I'm a trainer, but I specifically train Indigenous people, driver's licences, a whole bunch of stuff like that, you know. And as I go around the room, counsellors, invariably Aboriginal, not always, but each in that same community of Headland, the government has the same mob. We've got a medical mob down there, and we've got counsellors over here, and we've got this over here. But they're completely disconnected. They're siloised. They don't talk to each other. Their motivation of getting out of bed every day is not as clear as a VTEC mob, I can tell you that. And what they do that is so incredible, they've decided, it's not that any particular action, it's their motivation is to say no excuses. No excuses. And so they take the excuses away. When you're disconnected, they know, they're saying, oh, I'm a bit crook. You know, got that on that foot falcon, boss, can't, you know, no car. Whatever it is, there's something happening. So they sit down and they say, right, this is a joint responsibility. We've got the responsibility. We will train, we will love you, we will look after you, and we will guarantee you a job. But what you have to do is you have to tell us all the things that can possibly stop you from doing that, and we'll help the best we can. It's like a deal. And that's what government has been trying to do for a long time. I think we're getting closer to it, but nowhere near as close as the FNG model. And what happens, they take all those things away. It might be transport. Okay, we'll have to help with that. What are you going to do with that? You know, I'm an alcoholic and I love drugs. Well, that's okay, but we're going to have to deal with that. We've got 6 weeks. This is what you're going to have to do, and the whole range of things. But it's absolutely focused. But interestingly, that whole joint responsibility thing, I think really works. And I've spoken to so many people in the mines who came through the VTEC model. We're talking about career paths today. Interesting, we're talking to Nev. Nev's the CEO. I was talking to him in another forum, but how you going, mate? How you start off? Really knockabout bloke, my sort of bloke, lovely guy. And she's, started off on a farm, then I've, become a boilermaker. I got a job on the mines, I got on the gear, I drove around the truck. He's the CEO of Fortescue's Metal Group. And so it's an environment in all these places, a mining industry is not an industry that you get promoted because you sort of know someone. It's a very robust industry. And I think so many Aboriginal people who started with VTEC are now several strains up the ladder and basically looking at what you want to do. Paddo's talking to me about wanting to get on the graders and saying those bastards are in line, but I'll get around them. And you will, brother, you will. And so the VTEC model is an incredible lesson for government. It's about de-siloising, about directing people so there's a specific outcome. You know, one of my sort of adages of life is the world's run by the people who turn up. But it's not everything. You can't just turn up. You know, you've got to have a specific purpose. The VTEC mob turn up, they know exactly what they're doing, they know exactly what their role is in a team, they know exactly what motivated them, and they know exactly what their targets are. You know, the equally lovely Sheila that turns up at the health centre in Port Hedland turns up. What's happening today? Oh, yep, runny nose, finger, whatever it is. And I think that if government wants to help, apart from my usual advice is just getting out of the way, is that if you have to intervene in some way, assisting mining companies, because I also think, and now Twiggy disagrees with me, but we disagree on a couple of things, and that seems to be all right, but that I don't think it's sustainable. It might be for him, he's a bit of a philanthropist, really loves this stuff, loves the countrymen, wants to make a difference. But it's a model that is really expensive. They've just got a health department, they've got a counselling department, they're duplicating government. So one of the things we must look at is in the development of our VTEC models, and that's sort of our policy, I don't want to bang on about that, but we think it's a good idea. But I would certainly like to connect, for efficiencies, the existing service deliveries that we have. We've got to focus them on different outcomes. So I think one of the other reasons that Twiggy's gone this way is that he could have relied on the services, but they are simply unreliable. And the reason they're unreliable is they're not culturally appropriate. I still don't know what that means, but if you say blackfellow friendly to me, I'm sort of getting there a bit. But it's true. It is absolutely spot on. An Aboriginal person, and you might live in Sydney, it might necessarily mean to be a traditional person, needs to know that he has that comfortable feeling whether I'm going into a university, whether I'm going into a health clinic, whether I'm seeing a dentist, or I'm going seeing the taxman. They're all pretty horrific things no one puts their hand up for generally, but they need to be able to be comfortable. And that's just a fact. That's just a fact. So there's no point rolling out services that someone doesn't feel comfortable in. And that doesn't mean you have to have all black staff or any of those things. I won't go into the formula. Wayne knows them well, and those people who've been working in this area for a long time know what the formula is. And so certainly some of the learnings from that are clearly that we can, in terms of the service delivery in some of these places, we just need to do it better. Just saying, oh, tick, we've got a medical centre. The fact that no countrymen go to it, we should be saying, why not? Particularly if 40% of the community are countrymen. So there are so many good stories right at the moment. I just want to share with you my optimism. In the last 5 years, we have moved further, I reckon, than we have in the last 20. What that says to me, in the area of engagement and employment, that's coming to a geometric rate of progression. It's starting to really get up the hill. Now, it's low days yet, not big numbers, but I'm very excited by it. Perth Casino is currently employing a third-year chef who is a traditional man from out around Cherry Creek way, sort of southwest Paraburdee there. And he's doing really well and he's excited and all of those things. Again, they've made a decision. Housekeeping, bar service, casino floor, security, they're growing in numbers because we feel comfortable. It's a comfortable place to be. You know, I often say to my colleagues, they're saying, well, why don't we just, you know, and I probably had a bit of a crack at Twiggy about this as well, probably didn't get off on the foot immediately well, but he was saying, oh, look, come and work in the mining industry. And I sort of said, look, mate, can you imagine the difficulty coming from intergenerational unemployment to a 12-hour shift on the other side of the world on your own? You know, sorry, but we've got over that now. But and to his credit, nothing about what I've said, he's done an enormous amount of work to ensure that that jumble is actually closed and that amicus role follows. So Perth Casino, Ayers Rock. I used to always go, you know, I'd go and stay at Ayers Rock, go and see my mob in Mutijula and need counselling. It was tough, it's just tough going. Go back to Ayers Rock and say, how's it all going here? Just saying, oh, down the road, all these people. No blackfella, mate. Not a blackfella. Not even an imported blackfella or a borrowed one. Just white people. And then they'd say, you're sitting at the bar and people say, where are all the Aboriginals? And I'd just have another run. You know, I can't, it's just to feel ashamed. The ILC bought it, bless their socks. They've decided, you know, I won't go into the details, but they got it right. 125 people have now been full-time employed who are Aboriginal for more than a year. For more than a year. Now, there are some fundamentals there about why that's a bit easier there. See, what happens, Ayers Rock's generally away from home. And when you're away from home, you're away from a lot of the challenges of home. You know, the humbug and, you know, up all night and other people, and it's just difficult. It's difficult to break away. But because it's residential, you get a place to live, it does fix a lot of those things. So some of these examples aren't examples you can use everywhere, but they are excellent examples. And you know what they're saying to me? Nigel, it's been a couple of days, Nigel, I'm going to get my brother up. I've got him coming from Brisbane. I'm a bit worried about him. He's off the rails a bit. He come up here, he's going to be right. And they all go home for Christmas. They all go home for Christmas, as we all do. And as Warren was saying yesterday, the issue of mobility is a very important issue. I think in the mining industry there's great opportunities, but the opportunities genuinely only exist within a catchment that's available to a fly-in, fly-out. That's the reality of it at the moment. So one of the great question marks that we all need to think about, I don't think there's some instant answers, is what do we do about mobility? What's government's role in mobility? And the mining companies will no doubt tell me we need to subsidise fly-in, fly-out. No. Just in case you bother about that, no. But there are some things we can do in terms of investment. Part of the challenges that Fortescue has is not issues about that they're having to subsidise it, but there are some fundamental inefficiencies in having a half-full plane. There's just some, you know, so there's some efficiency issues that perhaps government can help with. So the whole notion about partnerships between Indigenous people, organisations in industry and governments is fundamentally about a conversation about a hand up, not a handout. Now, look, this is a conversation we have to have. And it's interesting. I mean, one of the reasons I love Warren is we share a few of our views. Again, I think he got lost on the way to Canberra, but you know, we share a lot of views because we've mates for a long time and been able to, you know, have too many drinks and really scream at each other about things. And so we've sort of welded a pretty tight relationship. And where it's interesting though, I have to rely on Warren. I have to rely on Bapaji. I have to rely on Noel. I don't rely on them. They don't know I rely on them. But, you know, there's this thing in this country that because I'm white, I can't really say too much about suggesting things because there's this, it's almost like someone sits behind a pole with a big racist banner, you know, that they're going to jump out because Nigel says, look, you know, hand up, not a handout. Oh, yeah, he's bloody racist. You know. But when the countrymen say it, people, well, they can't, they think about it because the natural reaction of a lot of people, if I don't like what you're saying, therefore if I can change people's perception of you, then it will diminish what he's saying. And that's just life. That's why leadership in Indigenous Australia is just so important. It's the toughest job. I mean, I remember, you know, 20 years in Babaji's trying to understand better. His responsibilities are beyond our ken. They are complex and sophisticated. And the depth of them is beyond anything that we have in our system, beyond anything. They're under enormous pressure, which is why I think, not only in the conventional use of the term cherish, but in a very practical way, we need to find ways to support those organisations and those leaders to take a bit of pressure off it. And that means we've got some fantastic stuff that the current government's doing about Indigenous leadership courses and supporting courses, and I commend Jenny Macklin for that. They're the sort of things we need to invest in because, again, fundamentally, this is a very important area that without having these conversations, it's going to be very, very difficult. Now, I've conveniently left out what I was supposed to do and talk about the range of initiatives the coalition's got and what a wonderful job we'll do, which is who would know. But instead I'll say, well, it's a challenge. There's no point saying glibly that we've got a better answer than that because the world out there, in this world, Indigenous Australia, has so far been an experiment. You know, we rush in and we say, we'll do this and we'll do that. How'd that go? Oh, not so well. Sorry, guys, we'll just do something next time. So I would really hope that we have a more bipartisan approach because we have conversations. We sit down in a fair income sense between governments and we do that. Now, the only ones that I've yet to bring to the table in that have been the Greens. I don't like them. They make me really cranky. Let me tell you, I'm not a good person when I'm cranky. I don't even like myself. But, you know, so anyone has an opportunity to say, look, we can't just politicise everything for political points and votes. There has to be a point under which we have to take responsibility for who we are and what we say and how we say it. Because without that coming together of everyone who's responsible and saying this is an area where your normal behaviour, it's like a national park. When you come in here, leave the guns at the door, you know, like this is an area where we have to tread differently and we have to treat people differently. And I think that's one of the greatest challenges of Australia, is to be able to have conversations in an open and transparent manner. That's what's going to be able to change the way so we can have opportunities for our first Australians to be exactly the opportunities that our children have got.